Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Multifamily Chronicles. I'm your host, Adrian Danila. Today marks another premiere for the show. I have a brand new guest co-host, and the guest co-host is Sydney Weber. Welcome to the show, Sydney.
Thanks for having me, Adrian. We've podcasted together quite a few times in the past. It's funny, I ran into your normal co-host at a conference last week at RecCon, and I was like, hey, I'm doing this with Adrian. He's, oh, thank you. You're like a substitute teacher, but I can't do it. I appreciate being here and being your substitute co-host teacher. And I'm really excited about the guest. This is so serendipitous. I have a funny story about Thu-Van. I don't know if she remembers this. Okay, fun fact. The guest today is Thu-Van Cunningham. She is the Senior Director of Recruitment at Western Wealth. And if you don't know anything about Western Wealth, they have a reputation in this industry for being just like incredible culture, really great growth opportunities. I've had the pleasure of speaking to you in the past, Thu-Van, and also interviewing your colleague, the president of Western Wealth, Jennifer Shatokis. We talk a lot about how she like empowers her teams and communicates and does all that. So it must be fun being on the phone as a recruiter, being able to tell people the culture. But my fun fact about Thu-Van is before she was at Western Wealth, she was for about 3 years at Avenue 5. And when I was an itty bitty baby marketer in my very first marketing job, you had reached out to me on LinkedIn and were recruiting me for a job at Avenue 5. It didn't end up working out, but extra fun fact, one of my really close friends ended up moving over to Avenue 5 and she's still there like all these years later. So it's a great company. You chose some good ones and they chose a good one, obviously. So I'm excited to chat with you.
I'm so excited as well. And yes, that is a funny story because it's what also has happened with Western Wealth. It's just such a big industry, right? And I'm just super excited about being on this call with you and with Adrian. You guys are industry leaders here.
Oh, thank you. Adrian, I think you said that I get to ask the first question. Is that right?
Of course, you do.
Okay, I'm going to do a little crossover moment. So, Thu-Van, I also host a podcast called Life After Leasing. And the whole premise is the career that you build after becoming a leasing agent. I know you did not start as a leasing agent, I can tell from your LinkedIn, but I'd love to hear the story of how you fell into and now have been captured for forever into the multifamily industry.
Yeah, I think once the multifamily bug bites you, you're in it forever. It's just such an exciting industry, but I don't think anybody ever wakes up or is it? As a little girl, I thought, oh, I want to be a recruiter. That's exactly what I want to do when I grow up. I fell into recruiting. I think a lot of people who are in it, they just fall into it. I started out, 14 years ago, I was working at a security company, a very large organization, and I was working the front desk. And then I started getting my hands into helping HR and was booking interviews and reviewing resumes. And then next thing I know, there was a position open and I put in for it. And that's where I got the bug for recruiting and just went into different industries. And it's funny because Western Wealth is so young, but my last, 3 or 4 recruiting jobs have been for startups.
Thu-Van, you said you fell into. This is like the story that we're hearing all the time. It's shockingly when I hear someone that says, this was like intentional for me getting into multifamily. What can we do from a recruiting perspective to actually make people choose this career as a choice, not by happenstance, not by accident? What can we do as an industry?
As an industry for the multifamily, or are you referring to just recruiting itself?
Just for multifamily in general, how do we change this? How do we turn tables and we actually go from defense to offense? Because if we're just waiting for people to fall into the industry, I don't think that's like super proactive. How do we go after people and we actually make them aware that there's a fascinating industry, there's a fascinating world out there they should be a part of?
Yeah, absolutely. When I got into the industry, I didn't know anything about it. And after being in the industry and recruiting for the on-site and the corporate level positions, there's so much growth in the industry. And I think people aren't aware that you can just come in at an entry level and have that progression in this industry. There's so many different ways you can go. You can go into maintenance, you can go into being on site, you can go into marketing, you can go into asset management or stay on the operations side. So I think making sure people are educated that there's all kinds of avenues to go within the industry itself.
Actually, it's there in the revised community. Bobby, the founder, just posted a list of 16 summer internships. I haven't seen these really in the past, or maybe I guess I wasn't looking, but 16 different property management companies are offering summer internships. It's starting to happen.
Yeah, internships is a great way. You've got these young college students who are working towards that degree, but don't necessarily know what industry they want to be in. And we've had a couple interns that were getting an accounting degree, worked on the accounting side. I think the other thing with maintenance too is not always thinking just maybe the colleges, but the trade schools. That's a good resource too, to make people aware of who we are within the industry, and we should join multifamily. It's such an exciting industry.
For sure. I have some very dear friends who are recruiters. Shout out to Tabitha Del Dare. Actually, I can't say her last name. I don't know. I should have practiced it. And my friend Sarah Thompson, who has been bebopping around from the inside and outside of the industry. But one thing I've noticed about Tabitha, who recruited me at 2 jobs, she is an exceptionally amazing salesperson.
Mhm.
And I don't really previously I hadn't really associated recruiters with sales, but your job is so important in selling, especially when it's competitive, like on-site roles, maintenance roles. Tell me about, do you have any tips and tricks for other recruiters that are trying to bulk up their sales skills when securing these best candidates?
You're right, Sydney. There's so much more to being a recruiter than just posting a job and talking to people and making an offer, right? You have to be able to have the sales background, right? You're selling the culture, you're selling the company, you're selling the position, the opportunity for growth. Where can they take their career path? You're doing the marketing as well. So one of the things that I did when I first started is I paid attention to what other recruiters were doing on LinkedIn, getting connected with the industry, having those industry connections on LinkedIn, following them. I've been following you for years and watching your marketing and paying attention to that. I've been following Adrian for years. So there's a lot of good people to follow on LinkedIn and learn from them. But yeah, you definitely have to be good at sales. It's not just posting, praying, talking to people, but it encompasses all that. And I think that's the other part of why I love it so much. It's not just interviewing, making an offer. There's so much more that goes into it. So you have a big variety within your role.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the things, Thu-Van, that I've noticed in many organizations that I work for, it's the lack of streamlining of the process, right?
Mm-hmm.
The resume comes in and the policy says, I don't know, a lot of times it's not even a policy, like who should open that email? Who should look at the resume? What's
Mm-hmm.
the timeline? You should be looking at the resume within the next 5 minutes after you receive the email, or 2 hours, or 6 hours. I'm not aware of any type of policies. So almost each company that I work for, people were, I guess, allowed to just wing it. So if you had a person that had more initiative, obviously they got in there, they looked at their leads, and they called the leads. They were very proactive. They were very successful, but there was not really a written process in place. Is there anything that you do or you have done in the past that helps with streamlining this process and reducing the touching points, first of all, that a candidate has to go through, and reduces the time from the moment they apply, they hit send, and they send that email to your recruiting department or to any recruiting department, and then the time that the offer is on the table?
Yeah, I have a very tight timeline here, turnaround, right? It's an extremely competitive market. And if you think that we're the only ones hiring for property managers and interviewing right now, then you are 100% wrong. Time is of the essence. We're not saying you have to rush and just make an offer, but you definitely have to move that process along. I have an expectation. I set that expectation up front with the hiring managers and with my team. We get notifications every time somebody completes a resume or applies through Indeed or whatever it may be. And we are looking at all those resumes same day. We are reaching out to candidates that we want to get on the calendar and streamlining that, getting them on with the next day or so, if not that same day, picking up that phone, having that initial interview. We put together our notes and we get them over to the hiring manager. And it's expected that these hiring managers are reaching out within 48 hours tops. Staying organized with that and knowing where your candidate is in each step of filling this role is very important. So once you get it filled, not only is that part important, but so is the onboarding of the candidate. So we use trackers. We do a lot of follow-up. We are drivers of that process. And I would say our average time to fill is anywhere from 3 to 5 days.
That's a goal, like a golden rule for me. Hire within a week. Have that offer. I will say sometimes I go to the extreme, hire within the same day. You receive the email, you do the screening, you send it to the hiring manager. They should be empowered to do the interview and make a contingent offer. We understand some states where companies still require drug testing. Some of them require background testing. You want to wait for those results in order to validate. But if you make a contingent offer, that's very powerful, right? It's like sales. Don't let the person leave your site, because chances are you're not going to see them again without an offer. If there's someone you have an interest in, make sure the offer is on the table.
That's right. And we have done contingent offers, right? There's a need to get the position filled, and not only just to get it filled, but filled with the right person.
It sounds like you work on a very tight timeline. You have a great process, but it relies a lot on the hiring manager to be on the same page and on the same timeline as you. If you could say anything to all the hiring managers out in the world or have any tips for them, what would they be?
I would say time is of the essence. If you, like, as I said, if you think you're the only one interested in this candidate, especially if they're a good candidate, it literally can be within the hour you lose someone. If you think they're good, so does everybody else. So make that decision, have that conversation, conduct that interview, and get that offer out.
Thu-Van, my experience with larger companies has been that they build silos within the companies. Each department is a silo. They operate within a silo. What are some ways in which you break the silos and you cooperate with other departments? Just tell us in a real world, in your world, how does that happen? What are some things that you do to work well with other departments to make hirings happening?
So I think first, one of the most important things is making that connection with the hiring manager, understanding what exactly it is they're seeking in a candidate and identifying that in a candidate. But it goes beyond that. You have to also understand the personalities on site, right? It has to be cohesive. They have to be a culture fit. And then I would say building that trust with the hiring manager, I think, is important, and showing your value. When you're talking to them about a candidate, sometimes they may say, yeah, I'm not really interested in that candidate. They're just not checking every box for me. But if you pick up the phone and you have that conversation with the hiring manager and you say, Sydney, I'm telling you, if you have 5 minutes to talk to this one candidate, you're going to see what I'm seeing in them. And by building that relationship and that trust, I think when you do have to pick up the phone, maybe the resume isn't the best, but the initial phone screen you had was, then pick up the phone and call your hiring and say, I'm going to send you this candidate. They may not look good on paper, but once you talk to them, you're going to love them. And when you start to build that rapport, they're going to trust in you. And I think that will also speed up the process of getting positions filled and building those relationships across other departments.
Speaking to more of the candidate perspective, you mentioned like maybe the resume isn't as great, but you have to talk to them. I have a lot of people in my network who are looking for a job, and people are looking for jobs for extended periods of time. And maybe it's not the same situation for like on-site teams, but maybe there's a lot of like really well-known marketers in the industry and like great people that are searching for a new role. What advice would you have for them in terms of how they should be positioning themselves in their resume, or what proactive approach they can take to get noticed for a job amongst a sea of candidates?
I would say read the job description you're applying for. Customize your resume to highlight the skills that are for that particular position you're applying to. Do your research on the company. Find people on LinkedIn that are in that company. Maybe send them a message. Do your research. So when you do get that call and you're asked, so what do you know about Western Wealth? Instead of saying, well, yeah, I'm not sure, I didn't have time. Do that research, because that tells the recruiter you're really invested in the time that they're taking to spend with you, and you're very interested about this company, and you've taken the time to read about the role and the company itself.
Awesome.
The way I look at recruiting is that like it's pure sales. It's pure sales. If you're a recruiter, you gotta sell. You gotta sell your openings. You gotta sell your product. You could disagree with this, and please tell me if you disagree why. But if I was a candidate, someone that is on a market for whatever position, why Western Wealth? How would you sell me on opening a position, an opportunity with Western Wealth? How would you do that?
It is sales, right? But you also have to believe in your product, right? I'm experiencing it firsthand. The company itself, where we're young, we've had quite a bit of growth within the first 2 years. Our approach is people first, not only with our residents, but also with our employees. We're big about promoting from within. We also are here to provide you with the tools, the training, the technology that you're going to need to be successful in your role. And my goal is always to put the right person in the right position so that they are successful, because I do want them to have a good career path here.
It also makes your job easier. You don't have to recruit again in 3 months.
This is true, but you know what? It's really, and I know it's sales, it can come across like a pitch, right? You don't want it, you want it to come across as a conversation. And when it is truly a good culture, it's a great opportunity. We're young, we're 4 years old, but we are definitely making noise in the industry. And I think it's a good time for a lot of people to join us, being that we are young and we're going to continue to grow. And we've had good success. And I've seen quite a few promotions. Just telling the story of what it was when I got here and where we are today, that makes it easy. Is it a sale? Yeah, but is it the truth? Yes.
Adrian, before this, we hit record, you mentioned that you're going to be interviewed, or you interviewed Jen Picotti from Swift Bunny earlier today. They just launched their employee risk report, and I had a chance to chat with them. I love talking to them about that report. It's so insightful. And something that is very consistent across the results of that report over the last 3 years that I've read it is pay is not the only thing that attracts employees and creates employee happiness, but it's like true growth potential at a company. Really important to see. At Updater, where I work, they have career tracks, and I know what level I'm at, and I can see very plainly laid out what exact qualities the next track has and what I need to do to hit a promotion trigger. So there's so much transparency when it comes to growth. And based on my conversations I've had with your team, Thu-Van, I feel like you have that same kind of format for anyone that's maybe trying to build a more structured program when it comes to internal growth and promotions. What advice do you have to make sure that the program is set out and that it's clearly communicated to the employees at your company?
That's a great question. And I think first it starts honestly with recruiting. Because when I am interviewing someone, I'm not only interviewing them for that role that they're interested in, but I'm thinking when I'm interviewing, will they be whether it's on site, if they're coming in at leasing, will they make a good AM, an assistant manager down the road, or even on the corporate side? If it's marketing, will they be a good marketing manager down the road? So I'm already thinking ahead for their next steps. But we have training in place. We have a university where we have a internal promotion process that we've put in place so that we're fair and consistent across the board. And we're not going to promote just to say we were able to promote, right? We want to promote so that they can be successful. And if they're not quite ready, we have that conversation up front and say, you know what? Let's work on that for the next opportunity that comes along. And this is the training we're going to put you through. And we have a really good training department. So that's what I think should happen when it comes to being able to have that career growth and make it known that you want to grow and you're looking for that next position.
Yeah, you don't get anything you don't ask for.
Thu-Van, I want to ask you, if I'm a candidate, how could I impress you? what are some questions, or what were some questions that you were asked in the past that really impressed you, that you said, I really like this person, I really like their question, their approach, really should push this person as a candidate to a hiring manager?
I like when candidates are asking about future possibilities with us. What would my next step be? Because that tells me they're truly interested in having longevity and a career path with us. Like when they also want to know about our culture, because they're looking to fit. So asking about our culture, asking about where they can go with their career, what the expectation is within the 30, 60, 90 days, what type of training are they going to receive, what are the expectations of the role. So those are some really good questions that I like, because if they have these questions, they clearly thought about a future with us and where they could be. And that impresses me.
Speaking of where you want to be and thinking about where you want to be, Thu-Van, where do you want to take your career?
I would definitely like to grow my team. As we continue to grow and acquire additional properties, I will definitely be growing my team. But I would also like to see myself in a senior director role. Then eventually, my goal is to be a VP and to have a high performing team.
Amazing. I feel like there's a little bit, maybe this is just me, but there's a little bit of misconception about like understanding the different roles between recruiting and people team, like HR, recruiting, people. Where's the delineation between those groups, and how close knit are you?
I think because we are a startup that we're very close. We all work very closely across the board. Some people are operationally focused. Some people don't think that there's really a big need for HR recruiting. That's just some of the mindset. But overall, I think we work across the board, because you can't have operations without people, and you can't have the people without operations. I don't know if there's a line. And it's funny because we were on some training earlier today about working as a team and collaboration, and we're big about collaboration over here. I don't know if there's necessarily a line for us. We just all join. There's a partnership, and we get it done, and we understand we all really need each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
To one, maintenance, and all candidates in general, but maintenance especially, I will say that for the most part, they're not really savvy in building the resume, maintenance candidates. It's also very well known that a recruiter looks at a resume, I think the average is 3 or 4 seconds. What are some things that will catch your attention within 3 or 4 seconds that a candidate should put on the resume? And this is, like I said, if you could tailor this advice towards maintenance in special, especially because I know that they're not savvy, or like they're not putting the time that maybe other people that have tech skills or like design skills to make the resumes look pretty. What are some tips and tricks that you could share with us that a candidate could really get your attention within 3 or 4 seconds?
Yeah, and you're right. I'm sorry, maintenance, but you guys don't have the prettiest resumes, and they may not always list everything, and that's okay, right? That's okay, because I've had some interviews where the resume wasn't pretty at all, and they ended up being fantastic. One of the things that catches my attention is certification: CPO, HVAC, EPA, the certifications. I would say the other thing they should put on their resume is the size of the properties they've worked at. I like to see that. And then I like to see how many work orders on average they complete, to see how they work throughout the day. Do they work with a team? Do they work alone? Are they able to get, on average, is it 7 work orders a day? And just list any additional training that you've had and progression. I like to see some progression, especially if I see like a groundskeeper that's moving up and is into a maintenance soup. That definitely gets my attention.
So it's been a little over a year since the general public had access to ChatGPT, and now AI is a big part of all of our lives. I am definitely come across a lot of TikToks of like advice on how to use AI to rewrite your resume for keywords in a job description, or how recruiters might be using AI to filter candidates, which I don't know that's happening very much in our industry or not. But how has the mass movement towards using AI, just like culturally for the average person, affected your role?
I would say personally for myself, I'm trying to learn more and more about it because that's the direction everything is going in. I've taken some training classes on LinkedIn with it. I've played around with it. I'm using it for our job descriptions or for some of the marketing we have and putting that in there, make it engaging, or even asking it to create maybe some out of the box kind of questions for interviews. I don't know if, like you said, if it's really on the recruiting side as far as scanning resumes at this point within our industry. I think there's only so much that it can do, but there's also going to have to be that human touch that looks at it or decides if that's the right resume. People can use it for resume ready, but then also sometimes you can look at it and see that's clearly not something that they put together. So I think you have to be careful with it.
Yeah, that's where I was getting at too. Like, how many
Mhm.
times are you getting resumes where you're like, this is written by Chat?
Yeah, it's funny. I don't think I get a lot of them, but there have been some where I you can tell. And it's funny that you say that. There was a forum on LinkedIn where they were asking questions and I was looking through it. And there was one where someone had literally taken it from the chat GPT and copied and pasted it. And just out of curiosity, I put the question in ChatGPT and it spit out the exact same answer. So you have to be careful with that. It's a great tool, but make it your own.
Mhm.
You don't want to comes to your resume.
Yeah, I know, and also I use it daily. I've given it a name.
Mhm.
It's Ethel, and my whole team calls it Ethel, and it just populates so like word walls. As a
Mhm.
recruiter who's filtering through a million different resumes, what's the value in, like, keeping what you have to say as short and to the point as possible so you can get the information and move on?
Yeah, I don't. I personally myself, like Adrian was saying, you can literally look at a resume with it after you've been doing it a while, look at it for a few seconds and know whether or not you want to talk to that person. But I think it's important to not make it paragraphs, make it bullet points. Give me bullet points, give me your highlights, give me your strengths, the things that we are looking for that particular role is what I want to see in bullet points, and to keep it concise and don't go past 7 years.
Good tip.
Thu-Van, red flags. Let's talk about red flags. What are some red flags that you want to share with us on a resume when you read the resume? What are some red flags that are coming up in an interview, phone screening or face-to-face conversation interview?
I think it's important to make sure that you're actually listening. Let them talk, let them do most of the talking, but listen to the words that they're using. For example, I've had people say, we worked on this project, and when I hear we, then I have to ask, when you say we, are you referring to a team or did you do this individually? And a lot of times you'll find out that it wasn't something they did on their own. No, they had a very little part of it. So listen to the words that they use and dig a little deeper. Okay, if that was your part, tell me a little bit more about that. So to me, that's a red flag. I know back in the day, if you saw short tenure at each job, that was a flag as well. But I think also you have to adjust for that now. We have a different workforce that's up and coming, and people leave for different reasons. And we had COVID back in 2020, and there's a lot of reasons for that. So I don't, sometimes that could be a red flag, but I think it's important to ask what those reasons are. And then the red flags could be those reasons, right? So I didn't get along with the team. I didn't agree with the manager. I have no idea why they fired me. So to me, those are red flags.
Do you advise that people are not transparent? Situations in life happen. So, someone might have had a really bad experience with a
Mhm.
manager. What
Mhm.
would you advise a candidate? How would you advise them to speak about that particular experience when asked or even unsolicited? Should they share a lot? Should they share a little bit? How should they word it so it doesn't sound like it's a complaint where it happened because of, and it's like they were the issue, not actually their manager or the person that actually made them feel a certain way.
So I've had interviews that right off the bat, the first 10 minutes of the call, all they've done is bash the company, bash the manager. They take zero responsibility in it. For me, that's a sign. If there is a reason behind it, I would say just keep it to the facts, but don't go on and on about it. But because sometimes you can have a bad manager, right? Or it's a toxic work environment. Those are some valid reasons. And I think if it's that, it's going to be short and to the point, and they're going to give you the reasons behind it.
Are there I feel like when I'm asked those questions, not that I have had any like very many toxic in situations. I've been very fortunate in my career, but what do you think about candidates kind of turning those questions around or maybe not being so upfront about it? Yeah, it was a toxic maybe. Are there tips of how you can maybe the opportunities at the company didn't align with my personal goals, things like that? Is what type of answers do you hear from people that are green flags?
Yeah, like if they've hit a ceiling and there's no more room for growth, that's a valid reason for leaving a company or not staying there as long. Maybe you were only there for a year and a half, and you just knew there wasn't going to be any more room for growth. So for that, those are valid reasons to me. If it just wasn't a good culture fit, that's important, right? You've got to be able to fit within the culture or fit within the team. Maybe it just wasn't presented to you the way you thought it was going to be, and then you got there and it wasn't that at all. So to me, I believe those are valid reasons for not staying in your positions.
You mentioned earlier about tenure, right? The way you're looking at the tenure and the way you have maybe adjusted due to COVID and other circumstances, and maybe the younger generations coming up. How would you gauge someone as like literally being someone that's not going to work out because they're not going to be a long-term employee with you? What are some criteria that you use when you look at it strictly at the resume, right? And you say this is definitely a person that I wouldn't consider because of their hopping too much left and right. What are like some parameters that you use, some KPIs when you're judging that?
So if they're there for 2 months and the next role they're there for 3 months, anything I think less than a year, 2, 3, 4 times in a row, I think is an issue because I don't think you've given it long enough to ensure that you've learned the role or learned the culture, asked the question. It's a learning experience. And I think you've got to allow for that time for adjustment into a new position and not just leave because you don't like something.
You mentioned culture fit quite a few times. How do you coach your team, coach your hiring managers, prepare team members who maybe aren't as experienced with this, but how do you coach people as far as like diversity and like neurodivergency and like people that might be really great candidates, but maybe don't seem on the front end like maybe they don't look like the other people in the room and you want to make sure that they have a great experience and that you have a welcoming open environment. How do you navigate that but also coach hiring managers to put their best foot forward and really make people feel like they have a sense of belonging?
I think that starts in the interview process, right? So as soon as they go on site or interview with the hiring manager, I think that's where it starts to make them feel comfortable. Because ultimately it's going to be their decision once we make an offer, whether they want to join or not join, right? So I think it's important that it starts from there. And then I think it's very important to continue that day one that they're on site. Ensure that they have all the tools that they're going to need. Introduce them to the team members. Have a team lunch. Make them feel like they are part of the team and welcomed. And not just the first day, but check in with them at the end of the week. Make sure that they are aware that you're there for them and make them feel included. And then the 30 days, the 60-day, the 90-day mark. There's all these milestones that you need to check in and always make sure that they feel included. and that they are a part of the culture. Because I think also, not only do we have our company culture, but there's all these little mini cultures. Sorry. There's all these little mini cultures within the properties itself, right? So it's important to make sure that they're included, and that's where I think the diversity, equity, inclusion comes in. You need a diverse group.
Yeah, because our residents are diverse and our people are diverse, and we should represent everyone. That's awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So war stories. I love the war stories. I could write probably a series of books about my experiences in maintenance. Would love to hear your war stories. What is like the very best story that you have with a candidate? And what's the most outrageous or maybe funny story that you had with a candidate that you would like to share?
Oh boy, those are good questions. I would say I had a candidate that was a little over the top. I had put this person through the interview process. Actually, it was to join my team. And all of a sudden at 10 o'clock at night, I kept getting these LinkedIn messages. And it literally was like every 30 seconds from this person. But it just kept saying, I'm going to be such a great addition to your team, and I'm going to take everything to the next level. And it just kept going on and on. And it went on for 2 hours to the point where I had to turn my phone off. That was a little much. I do appreciate the excitement about the interview and the opportunity, but that showed a whole different side that I thought, this may not be the best fit for us. War stories, boy, I think it was with a hiring manager. It was before I came over here, and it was for a digital marketing firm. And this hiring manager just refused to talk to certain people. I need somebody who plays sports. And it wasn't anything that even applied to the job. And I finally just had to put my foot down and say, I really need you to talk to this candidate. You're going to have to trust me and talk to this candidate. He finally agreed. Fast forward a month later, he calls me and he says, Thu-Van, I'm glad I listened to you, because that was the best hire I've ever made. But he was just butting heads with me and wouldn't give. And finally, I just stood my ground, and he said, all right, I'll listen to you. And ended up being one of his best hires.
That's obviously, you know what you're doing. That's why you're in that job. Challenging as a hiring manager. I haven't hired that many people. I've been on like rounds of interviews, and it's a really scary decision. It's a very important decision because it's not something that you can easily take back, and it can really set you back if it's not a good fit. So it's very important as hiring managers to partner very closely, as you said earlier, with recruiters, because you can see things that we can't always see.
Yeah, and sometimes they want to just look at the resume. And I have to keep telling, don't judge the book by its cover. Trust me when I tell you, just trust me. And okay, we'll trust you. And then they trust me and it all works out. There's also so much you can vet, right?
Yeah.
And then they get on site and you hear these stories and you're like, oh my gosh, who is that person? That's not the person we interviewed. And they're like, I don't know. There's only so much you can do. They're human.
Yeah. Adrian said something earlier about how people fall into multifamily. It's not necessarily super proactive. No one daydreams about getting into multifamily.
Mm-hmm.
Give us some hacks. Where should we be looking? Like before I got into multifamily, I was a ballroom dancer. And I know there's a lot of baristas and waiters and like people that are good people. And you also mentioned certifications. Like, should we be lurking around schools? Like, where do we find people and that may have no thoughts and no other ideas about getting into this industry?
Yeah. We know that the first step in the industry is leasing, right? On site. If we're talking office staff, I would say, like you said, your baristas, your salespeople at the stores, your bartenders, they're very social. They're very friendly. They meet all walks of life. People who have strong administrative skills would be excellent. Sales, administrative, customer service. If you don't have any industry experience, those are the three things that I look for. And trade schools or military, ex-military. And ex-military is really good for maintenance because they have to They have all the buildings on base. They have the barracks, the housing, the military housing. So that's another good place to look outside of your standard multifamily competitors, but look in those areas.
That's a really good idea. We at Updater, we have a deal with the Department of Defense. We're building software for the military. And so I've been diving a lot more into life as a military spouse and what it's like and all the moving that they do. And another untapped market, obviously, the military members who are active duty are stationed places for 2 years, but
Mhm.
military spouses are always
Yes.
having to uproot their career every 2 years for their spouse. And 2 years is a pretty decent amount of time as a leasing agent at one community. And then maybe if you have a relationship and you have buildings across the country, they could be a
Mhm.
really good option for whether it's maintenance or for
Mhm.
office team. But they're definitely project managing a household in a challenging situation. They definitely know what it feels like to move all the time. So might be a really good empathetic candidate for leasing.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of groups on LinkedIn that are military or for military spouses. And it's funny you said leasing because I had a candidate apply and she literally had a job every year and a half. But no leasing, but she had the sales, the administrative, the customer service. And after interviewing her, I thought, oh my gosh, she's going to be amazing at this. And I sent it over, and the hiring manager was like, she's only been in her job every year and a half. And I said, look, this is the reason. That's why I say you can't judge a resume by its cover. Her husband's military, he gets stationed every year and a half to 2 years. So it's very hard for her to maintain a job any longer than that. And once they understood that and had that conversation, we ended up making her an offer, and she ended up being like the top leasing professional on site.
That's incredible. It's also like I don't want to speak to everyone, but a lot of people like I'm a millennial, a lot of my generation and Gen Z, like we don't have the same incentives to stay with the company long term that our parents did. Like pensions don't exist anymore. You can
Mhm.
just pop a 401k into an IRA and open a new one at the next place. There's got to be a lot of intentionality as an employer to give us a reason to stay because it's been proven like you can get pay bumps by hopping jobs like more easily. I had it when I talked to the ladies at Swift Bunny not too long ago. We talked about stay interviews, in addition to performance reviews, like how can you ensure, and you talked about this, Thu-Van, too, like the 30, 60, 90 check-ins, but like
Yes.
ongoing with your employees, make them feel like really be open to that communication because we just you don't have the same incentives as the olden days to stay at a company for 20 years.
Yeah, you hardly see that anymore on a resume, right? You don't see, if you see somebody who's been somewhere for 20 years, you're like, wow, because you just don't see that. Like you said, it's a different generation that's up and coming. It's not uncommon to see a new job every 2 years. So, as an employer, I think making it enticing with good benefits, PTO, the culture, the pay, the ability to have the growth in the career path here, and challenging your new hires as they progress in their career with us, provide them the opportunity to take on that additional responsibility and to get that training, but invest in them. I think has a lot to do with keeping this new generation. And not only that, but providing the leadership that they need and the guidance, I think is important.
Yvonne, you had an amazing career, and I hope that you're gonna make VP very soon. A lot of us, not just in recruiting, but me including, I've been following your career. I've known you for a long time from LinkedIn. I love the hustle, right? I love everything that you've been doing to get in front of candidates and make you made a great career out of that. What are some things that someone in recruiting, what makes a great recruiter, first of all? Second of all, what are some things that someone that's looking up to you right now and they want to become Thu-Van one day needs to consider?
Thank you for those kind words. I really do appreciate that. Coming from you, that means a lot. I think one of the things that you absolutely have to have is grit. You are going to have so many speed bumps. You think you're going to get across that finish line with that candidate, and the next thing, hi, sorry, I'm no longer joining. And now you've got to start all over again. Having grit, you can't take those things personal. You can feel beat up at times. But I would say do your research, follow other recruiters, don't hesitate to reach out, take a little bit from people you talk to and make it your own. I personally myself, I like startups. I like being able to come in and see where we're going, where we need to be, and putting those processes in place. But make sure that you have strong processes as a recruiter, and you're organized, and you're maintaining those relationships, because just because it's not something that works out today doesn't mean in a year or 6 months that you can't reach back out. So not only just recruit for what you have, recruit for future, and then work on maintaining those relationships and building up your network.
This was an amazing conversation, Thu-Van. I could have gone for a couple more hours easily. I got so many other questions I wanted to ask because of the time limit. I do want to give you the opportunity to wrap up with some final thoughts, and also I want you to share some of your information that some that might watch this episode could find a way to reach out to you, how they could get in contact with you.
I'm on LinkedIn every single day, all day. You can reach me at LinkedIn. You can reach me at my email address, Cunningham at westernwealthcommunities.com. If you see something that interests you, do not hesitate to reach out to me. Get your resume over. Boy, what else can I add?
That's a long email. They didn't.
I know, it's like I couldn't have been like TC at westernwealthcommunities.com. It's this long. Yeah, it's a long one. But you know what? If you just put my name in LinkedIn, you will find me. It's funny. I've done that to see how many other Thu-Van Cunninghams there are. And believe it or not, there aren't any others, which blows my mind. Out of the entire LinkedIn world there, which is millions and millions. But yeah, you can always reach me through LinkedIn or shoot me an email.
Sydney, it's your turn. Final thoughts and plugs. I want you to plug your podcast. I want you to plug Revise. I want you to plug anything that you would like to plug.
Don't twist my arm, Adrian. Of course I will. I had a lot of fun today, Thu-Van. It's such a pleasure chatting with you and catching up with you at different points in your career. I used to host a podcast called Renter Obsessed, and you came onto a very early episode, and it was super popular. It was really fun to get everyone together. We had a couple of different recruiters on it, I believe. But yes, I host a new podcast now called, it's not new anymore. I guess it's been around for a bit, called Life After Leasing. It's weekly. It's actually live, so people can join us and ask the guest questions. It's more of a hangout conversation than anything. And I just interview people that I think are smarter than me and I want to learn from generally, which is fun. Sometimes they're in the outside of the industry. Most of the times they're inside of the industry, founders, lots of different people. And I also help moderate a community called Revise. It's really great. It's a relatively new community, just less than 6 months old, but it's just that we do such, like, you're on LinkedIn all day, every day, Thu-Van, and so am I. I'm on it all the time, and it's still really critical. I think where Revise comes in is LinkedIn's not very searchable, and it's not just for us. Sometimes there's my friends from theater college posting things on there, which is great, and I want to keep up with them. Or some random salesperson that connected with me that wants to tell me their software. But Revise is like just for us. It's just for our little big industry, but it's also very searchable. And like if Adrian posts something brilliant a few months ago, I'm like, oh, what did Adrian say? I want to go back to that. It's not easy to find. But with Revise, it's, oh, it was about AI. It's in the AI section, and here I am. And they're typing his name, and it's easy to find. So it's basically like the LinkedIn that we're able to navigate without any of the ads, without any of the algorithm. And also, I host Life After Leasing in the community. So if you're a member, you could just pop in and out of the live community rooms. Other people host events there, apartment list. Lots of, I can't think of more off the top of my head at the time, right at the moment, but lots of people host live events in there. And it's just fun place to hang out. Also, we post jobs in there, tons of jobs. We have 2 job boards, one for operators and one for the vendor side. And that's it. That's all I have to plug. You can find me on LinkedIn too, Sydney.
Thank you, Sydney, and Thu-Van. Many thanks for taking an hour out of your busy day to come chat with Sydney and I and hang out. We hope to have you back here soon.
Thank you. I enjoyed it, and it's been so much fun speaking with you both. And I was so excited when I was invited to do the Multifamily Chronicles, and you guys are amazing. So thank you.
Good to see you. Thanks for the invite, Adrian.
Great to have you here with me, co-hosting. I hope to get you back here, to trick you back in to do another one, like 1,000 maybe. No pressure though.
Maybe we can do a crossover so we can just kill 2 birds with 1 stone.
100%. Everybody, Thank you so much for watching this amazing conversation special episode. I'm Adrian Danila, your host, Multifamily Chronicles. Hope to see you back here soon. Have an amazing day.
Bye.
Bye.